Hello and welcome to another AWS ISV interview. I'm Joaquin Lippincott with Toad. I'm your host, and today I'm joined by Christopher Levy of BuyDRM, CEO and founder. Welcome, Christopher.
Thank you, Joaquin.
So first of all, for anybody not familiar with BuyDRM, can you give us just the elevator pitch, what your company is about and what you guys do?
Sure. BuyDRM is one of the preeminent providers of content security services, mostly in the media and entertainment space, as well as we are growing quite a bit in e-learning. We're based in Austin, Texas. We've been in business for 20 years, and we have clients all over the world, companies like Fubo, Tubi TV, Twitch, and others.
Those are some great names. How do you guys get involved in the AWS and cloud space?
Good question. It really evolved out of kind of the movement away from co-located or managed hosting as a data platform in our business to a secure cloud. And at the point where around 2006 or seven, closer to almost eight, cloud
Mhm.
started to really grow as a secure platform. We just started looking at ways to expand our global footprint to deliver licenses. We were centrally hosted at a Death Star in Austin, Texas, and it was a managed co-location services, pretty extensive, several cabinets of gear, and we didn't really have latency or distribution problems because we're a transactional service. We're not bandwidth or disk dependent, but we just found that AWS clearly had this incredibly well built out suite of tools to host and run web apps and sites. And then also they quickly got into the media entertainment space, and they were one of the first clouds to really brand themselves as a media entertainment space.
Yeah.
Also at that time, I knew Sam from Elemental. We were partnered with them. And at the point where they acquired AWS Elemental, we just kind of came along for the ride, and we've been working with Brandon and the whole team up there. And today we're just completely integrated with them.
But how does your company fit within the M&E ecosystem, and how have you guys evolved over time?
Sure, it's also a good question. Well, within the M&E space, DRM is typically just a video workflow drop in. And so you have, content creation or capture, you have your transcoding or encoding,
Mhm.
you have what an industry now calls packaging, which was originally a term for the DRM industry for encryption. You have the
Hmm.
packaging, you have the watermarking, you have the encryption. And so, where we fit in is where when clients have, large scale content libraries that live in AWS and S3 storage, and they're
Hmm.
either pre-encrypting that content or encrypting it on the fly or watermarking and encrypting it on the fly, and then delivering it either through CloudFront or some other CDN, or just using their own web hosting empire in AWS. Our technology is there. It's the last thing that's put around the content in AWS before the content traverses to the user.
Hmm. Hmm. Gotcha. So do you focus more on the end consumer versus sort of, I guess, while it's in flight, or you do both while it's being edited? I mean, I think there's
Yeah.
watermarking that's happening all throughout these days, correct?
Yeah, so we have a what we call a lifecycle DRM platform, and really not that our DRM platform is specifically any different than other multi DRM platforms are out there, but we have clients using our technology during the content creation phase,
Hmm.
digital dailies, screeners, corporate marketing review. Then we have pre-release, which is post-edit, pre-release but preparation for release. Then we have clients using our technology at release, and then long tail, like Tubi TV using it long tail. And
Hmm.
then we also have like the Academy Awards last year used our technology to protect all of the forensically watermarked
Yeah.
content that was delivered. So DRM has now become a life cycle product that to effectively prevent as much leakage and piracy as possible, it has to be used at all those different waypoints where content moves from a pre-production environment into a review environment, into a pre-release, into a release, into a post-release environment. Each one of those steps in the process introduces the opportunity for piracy or leakage. And
Yeah.
so, in AWS, you can publish your content to AWS and S3. You can encrypt it at rest using their file encryption system. You can use their key management system to do that. You can also remotely store the keys. But then when a user requests the content, in essence, that's when in AWS, our clients, for example, using AWS Elemental Media Package or Media Live, those
Hmm.
platforms connect to us and get encryption keys over our API. The content's encrypted in AWS. And so the AWS client has the ability to kind of perform these complex media manipulation operations completely inside AWS where it's secure.
That makes sense. And you've already touched on my next question. I was going to ask you about any cloud technologies other than yours that you've read about or heard about that you find especially interesting. Are there any others that you would add to the list other than the ones you've mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mention so much about our multi-mark watermarking service, which I kind of wanted to plug, that's coming out, that's starting in AWS. But myself and my CTO's office, we've been looking at a lot of things like the trusted computing instances. Like,
Mm,
AWS now has the ability to create trusted computing instances where there's even more security, for example, in the content encryption phase where the keys are protected in hardware. So
mhm.
that's actually really a compelling thing. And we're also learning more and more about how other companies are utilizing watermarking and DRM and AWS, through public channels. So there's definitely some stuff out there that we've been observing, but I would say the one right now that we're most interested in are these trusted enclave or trusted instances of computing.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Um, as it relates to the coronavirus, we're sort of seeing a lot of changes, both in terms of reopening, but then also in the M&E industry, we're seeing a ton of restructuring that actually has been hitting in 2021. What do you think, if you were to look into your crystal ball, what do you think the impact of the coronavirus and the fallout will be in the M&E industry if you look over the next 12 months?
Also a great question. I mean, the past couple days news about Netflix subscribers to me has been kind of a point source situation. There's very few Netflixes in the world, Disney Plus and
Hmm.
Netflix, I would in Amazon Prime. You can't really derive a whole lot from what's happening with them with the rest of the industry. But at a fundamental level, and we blog about this on the DRM blog recently, I think everyone has seen a massive increase in the amount of traffic on their platforms for the past year and a
Mm.
half.
Yeah.
But, whether everyone, acknowledges it or not, the constraints around the pandemic have started to relax in different areas. And
Yeah.
so, people are saying, well, the numbers aren't going to keep rising as fast as they are. We've seen, our network has jumped 40% in traffic in the past year, and we're already
Oh,
up
wow.
22% this year. So traffic is up. Piracy is also up as a result
Mm.
because the pirates have less places now to gather the media because they can't go to movie theaters anymore. They can't go, battle Wi-Fi hack out in parking lots of post-production facilities. They can't
Hmm.
intercept DVDs in the mail because they're locked down. So the numbers are up, the piracy is up. But I feel like, I've been in this business for 26 years in the streaming business. I feel like that although the rate of growth is going to start to slow, obviously, I don't ever see it going back to pre-pandemic streaming levels because people have now really indicated that they want to move to streaming. And you have companies like Spectrum who are getting ready to get rid of their cable boxes. You've got
Yeah.
Comcast moving in that direction. So, in smart TVs, you can't buy a TV anymore that's not smart. And
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 they're
all
really
the
smart these
Yeah,
days.
they're so smart that you just want to throw them out the window sometimes. But I see this, we kind of had that we were cruising along, also we had this big bump, but now I just see it continuing to just kind of rise to cruising altitude. And I feel like this year we'll probably see another 10 to 12% of growth, but then the following year it'll be more like 6 to 8 and kind of level out in that area, 6 to 8% per annum as the cable
Hmm.
industry kind of moves into the space. And I think that's pandemic independent because
Hmm.
whether the pandemic continues or not, or we go back to the post pandemic norm or some form of it, the
Hmm.
streaming appliances are now everywhere and everyone is consuming streaming. And there's just, you almost don't know anyone who's not streaming something on a device, a TV, or their computer at this point. But
Yeah.
tons of people who are trying to get rid of their cable boxes. And I think that's an indicator.
Yeah, I threw mine out a couple years ago. I think the
Yeah,
last move I made, I just never plugged it back in.
smart.
What you mentioned about the Wi-Fi hacking, that's super interesting. I didn't realize that that was a vulnerability going in to do the studio. It seems like with that in place, it would be even more important to do the encryption and watermarking during production, because now you have all these dispersed, low security Wi-Fi, sort of home Wi-Fi that could be easily compromised if somebody knew where it went. We're kind of in the security by obscurity phase right now for that particular portion.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so the general industry, I think, has moved more to a couple best practices, which are encryption at rest, zero
Hmm.
trust model of devices and networks,
Hmm.
and increased watermarking and DR encryption in the pre-release content and post-release. And yet there are still gaps in the process where, have you seen a movie where they hijack an airplane? They're always find the food company, right? And they're sticking the guns in the ice packs underneath the Cokes and stuff, right?
Sure.
Well, it's kind of similar in the movie business. The movie industry and the entertainment industry at large, they produce content in one place, then they and formulate it and chop it down in one place. And then it's all
Hmm.
distributed to another place that actually edits it and produces it. And then it's moved to a distribution company who actually then prepares it for cinematic, theatrical, broadcast, and internet release. And
Hmm.
Wi-Fi has introduced a new vulnerability in that blended networks, corporate networks, and even commercial networks, like if you just go sit outside a Home Depot or a Target, um,
Yeah.
more and more people are struggling with keeping these Wi-Fi networks and blended networks secure. And so that's why you're seeing a rise of the security business, because people have blended networks now with VPN, wired and
Hmm.
wireless networks. So that Wi-Fi thing in general does, it creates problems. And so, in general, I think the industry is going to address that by, like I said, encryption at rest, watermarking, DRM.
Yeah. Well, it certainly beats the good old days where it was out on a DVD and somebody could just tear it to their local computer and it was.
I mean, just think that, the Academy Awards was a DVD process up until, like, I think just 6 years ago. But just
Oh
think from
yeah.
like 99 to 2000, and let's just say 8, 9 years, there were just DVDs and FedEx and UPS labels just flying all around the country. And CSS was hacked in 2000 and it continued to be
Mhm.
hacked. So yeah, it's weird. I won't lie. There's still some interesting, things going on with physical media out there that people are hopefully going to let. I mean, look, Redbox is a client of ours, right? But when I walk out of HEB here in Austin, there's people standing in line to get DVDs out of the Redbox kiosk.
Yeah.
I don't understand that, but I do get that, we're still in somewhat transition off those physical media products.
Yeah, yeah. The Academy, the I should say the movie Academy isn't alone. I'm a TV Academy member, and I
They're not.
remember getting in the mail all the time. It was funny. The
Record labels
last.
sending CDs out to artist
Mhm.
management and artists, sending them to the manager of the band, and the kid swings by his dad's desk and gets a stack of Lil Wayne
Yeah.
and Eminem's new albums and is out the door to, some torrent freak site. Yeah, it happens.
Sounds like, yeah. That's not a hypothetical, I suppose.
No, no.
Uh, so for our last question, let's go a little bigger. What do you think the impact of the cloud will be on business over the next 3 years?
I mean, I think it's going to be a continuation of expanding the complexities of technologies that are being presented to users. And an example is like AI and ML. Those are going to have a direct effect on the media and entertainment business by creating faster curation, better personalization, more secure syndication, and
Mhm.
lastly, making monetization more efficient. So it's going to
Mm,
allow
mhm.
people in the media entertainment space, for example, to experiment with new models at a much lower cost and liability point. An example is if a company's going into the AVOD space, the advertising VOD space, AVOD space is all about high volume and massive catalog and high repetition of plays, right? And the cloud is really going to further that because it's making more efficient where users get connected, what stream do they get connected to, what bit rates can they download. So the cloud, I think, is helping, virtualization, monetization, increasing efficiency, increasing syndication, and helping support these kind of experimental new models that a lot of these direct to consumer and B2C OTT platforms are going to have to investigate to continue to thrive, because right now they're all very similar. But over the next 2 years, I think the cloud will create some definition. It'll vary by clouds. I mean, obviously AWS has a pretty decent lead over, other cloud providers in the media entertainment space, but that will come under fire, which will in effect create better invention and innovation.
That's fascinating. Great insight, I think. So, Christopher, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you and buy DRM, what would be the best way to do that?
Just drop by our website, buydrm.com. If you're just looking for just information about DRM, both from a BuyDRM as well as a vendor specific standpoint, subscribe to the DRM blog at thedrmblog.com. But we're really easy to get a hold of, and we have clients all over the world. So we would welcome any inquiries that we get. And, we have a lot of different services, which we didn't talk about today, but we're happy to speak to any of the viewers that are out there. And if you're in AWS, definitely give us a look, please.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to subscribe to the newsletter right now.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. It's been
Thanks
a pleasure.
again, Joaquin. Really appreciate it. Metal Toad, this is a great series. We're big AWS fans, and thank you again for the time today.